Hello, my friend. I'm glad you're here again. Before we begin, take a slow breath in, hold it gently, and exhale. Let your body soften. Let your thoughts loosen their grip. Settle into this quiet moment, the one place where nothing is demanded from you. Today's question is one many people avoid until life forces them to face it. Why do we often ignore the small warnings life gives us, only to act when the consequences become impossible to undo? It's a painful pattern, one almost everyone recognizes, but rarely admits. Life whispers softly at first, a discomfort, a hesitation, a quiet feeling that something is off, but we brush it aside. We tell ourselves we're overreacting. We convince ourselves we'll deal with it later. We wait, we delay, we pretend we didn't hear, and then, eventually, life stops whispering. It starts raising its voice, until finally the consequences become too heavy to ignore, and by then something important may already be lost. Why do we do this? Let's walk into the heart of it, gently. 1. Because warnings are uncomfortable, and discomfort is easy to avoid. The first signs of trouble rarely look dramatic. They appear as small inconveniences, subtle hurts, quiet anxieties. The kind of things we can explain away with excuses. It's just stress. It's not that bad. Everyone goes through this. I'll fix it when I have more time. We don't ignore warnings because we're careless. We ignore them because they require courage. And courage is much harder to summon for small things than for disasters. A man once told me he had felt a tightness in his chest for months. He blamed lack of sleep, caffeine, stress. He kept telling himself, "I'll check it out next week." Next week became next month. One evening, he collapsed. A heart condition he could have managed early became something he had to fight hard to survive. He said later, "I didn't ignore the signs because I didn't see them. I ignored them because seeing them meant changing my life." Warnings demand change before we feel ready, and that is why we pretend they're not there. 2. Because small problems don't match our idea of urgency. Humans react strongly to dramatic danger, alarms, crises, clear threats. But subtle problems, slow declines, quiet deterioration, we struggle with those. Our mind tricks us. If it were serious, it would feel serious. But life rarely works like that. Most disasters begin as whispers, not explosions. A relationship rarely ends suddenly. It ends the moment small resentments go unspoken. It ends when tiny emotional distances stack up over time. A career rarely collapses overnight. It collapses when burnout builds quietly, ignored year after year. Our health doesn't fail in a day. It fails in the small choices we postpone fixing. Warnings are subtle because they're early invitations to act before harm takes root. But because they don't feel urgent, we convince ourselves we have time. We don't. 3. Because taking action means risking discomfort, and humans avoid discomfort like fire. Why don't people leave a job that drains them? Why don't they end relationships that hurt them? Why don't they confront problems early? Because doing so requires discomfort. The discomfort of truth, the discomfort of confrontation, the discomfort of admitting something isn't working, the discomfort of stepping into the unknown. We prefer familiar suffering over unfamiliar possibility. A woman once stayed in a relationship long after she felt unloved. She knew the early signs, the emotional distance, the lack of effort, the way her partner brushed off her needs. But she ignored it. When she finally confronted it, the relationship ended quickly. Something she feared, but also expected. She later said, "I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid of starting over. I was afraid of being alone with the truth." Warnings are invitations to honesty, and honesty can feel like stepping off a cliff. 4. Because we underestimate how fast later turns into too late. We tell ourselves life is long. We tell ourselves there is time. We postpone tough conversations, doctor visits, apologies, changes. We treat life as though it's a rehearsal. But life is not a rehearsal. One day, the person we meant to apologize to isn't there anymore. The child we plan to spend more time with has already grown into someone distant. The dream we thought we'd get to eventually no longer fits the life we're living. The body we abused with stress suddenly stops cooperating. The chances we assumed would come again don't. And when loss arrives, it doesn't ask permission, it simply enters. We rarely notice how quickly next time becomes never again. 5. Because most warnings come in the form of feelings, and we distrust our feelings. We're taught to trust logic, not intuition. So when something feels wrong, we reason it away. It's just in my head. I'm being dramatic. It's not logical. I need proof. But the body knows before the mind does. The heart senses shifts before facts appear. Your intuition whispers warnings long before your circumstances reveal them. A man once shared a story about his job. He said he felt unsettled for months, a quiet heaviness he couldn't explain. His colleagues told him he was fine. His boss reassured him. Everything looked stable on the outside. Then one day, the company laid off half the staff, including him. He said, "My intuition knew before the announcement. My fear made me ignore it." Feelings are early warnings, but because they're not concrete, we silence them. 6. Because we believe consequences only happen to other people. It's a strange human bias. We assume we are the exception. I'll quit smoking later. Nothing will happen yet. I'll fix this before it gets bad. I'll reconnect with my partner soon. They won't leave. I can handle this stress. I won't burn out. I'll spend more time with my family when life calms down. But consequences don't negotiate. They don't wait for you to be ready. They don't skip over you because you believe you're strong. A father once told me his biggest regret was believing he had infinite time. I thought my daughter would stay little long enough for me to finish my work, he said, but she grew up while I wasn't looking. Some consequences don't hurt immediately. They hurt eventually. And by the time they do, something irreplaceable is gone. 7. Because denial is easier than transformation. Warnings are uncomfortable, not because they're loud, but because they're true. To act on a warning means changing direction, changing habits, changing relationships, changing priorities, changing parts of ourselves. And transformation is painful. Human beings resist it until life forces the door open. A person ignores health symptoms because facing them means confronting fear. A person ignores emotional pain because facing it means healing old wounds. A person ignores dissatisfaction because facing it means rebuilding a life. Small warnings require big courage. We often wait until we have no choice. So why does life give us warnings at all? Because life, in its quiet wisdom, tries to protect us long before disaster arrives. Warnings are gifts. They are mercy in disguise. They are early invitations to shift before the cost becomes unbearable. They are the universe whispering, "Wake up, pay attention, change course while you still can." It's never too late to listen, but listening early saves years of pain. How do we learn to hear the warnings before they grow louder? Start with small practices. Pay attention to discomfort, emotional and physical. Trust your intuition when something doesn't feel right. Ask yourself what you're avoiding and why. Notice the small resentments in relationships before they turn into distance. Notice the small exhaustion in your body before it becomes collapse. Notice when your soul feels tired before it becomes numb. Be honest with yourself sooner, not later. And most importantly, stop waiting for clarity that comes only from crisis. Life already speaks to you, in whispers, in tensions, in quiet aches. Those whispers are clues. They are maps. They are warnings designed to protect what you still have time to save. A final story. A man in his 50s once told me, "I learned too late that life gives small warnings before it gives big lessons." He ignored the first signs of stress, ignored the small loneliness in his marriage, ignored his children asking for time, ignored his body's exhaustion. He thought he had time. He thought he could fix everything later. He assumed the early signs were just noise. By the time he finally looked at his life, his health was damaged, his marriage was fragile, his children were distant, his inner world was empty. He said with quiet regret, "I wish I had listened when the signs were small." Everything is harder to heal once it breaks. But then he added something else, something hopeful. "It took losing what I took for granted to teach me how to protect what I still have." Warnings may not always be pleasant, but they often arrive before things reach the point of no return. They show up not to punish you, but to pull you toward a wiser path. Your only task is to listen sooner. Thank you for being here, for giving yourself this moment to reflect. Stay gentle, stay curious, and stay kind. And if this question spoke to you, continue your journey with us on Yarven's Questions. More stories, more reflections, and more quiet truths are waiting for you. Take care, my friend.